Hey everyone, welcome back to Jashelle Tech TV. In this video, I'll be chatting with Mike, who is a tech professional, and I've been following Mike's journey in tech since around 2018 or 2019. And around this time, I decided that I wanted to move forward with a full-time career in tech. And I remember I was looking for remote jobs in tech with skills that I'd gained mainly through personal experience, like personal projects. And I didn't have a ton of professional experience at the time, but I've always dabbled in making websites, always liked technology, etc. Long story short, I found this company looking for people to support WordPress websites, and it was 100% remote. I was exploring this company's career page to learn more about the company, and I just remember thinking it looked like a cool place to work. And I think the employees were spread out all over the globe, and they had information about their team and what they do. And I was reading and I found Mike's blog and social media pages. And Mike had a blog sharing about his life working 100% remote in tech, resulting in being able to move around and live in different cities, getting to explore the world. He even lived in Taiwan at one point, which I thought was pretty cool. And I was kind of binge reading Mike's blog posts because of how inspiring it was. I would always look forward to reading about his next adventure or new role in tech. And the kind of career style he has was pretty much what I was aiming for at the time, to have a rewarding career, but not necessarily have to be bound to a particular city or state. To be in a field I enjoyed, but in a way that was flexible. Did not get the job, but this is how I found Mike. Of course, I have since reached my goal, and I finally get to talk to Mike for the first time. So in this video, I'll be getting to know about Mike's current tech role, and hopefully this chat can also help anyone that is either entering the tech field or already in the tech field who may be interested in learning more about this role. And with that said, hi Mike.
Hey, how are you?
Good.
I like the intro.
Thank you. Definitely inspiring. And so we're just going to start with some introductory questions.
Sounds good.
So what is your current role and how long have you been in this role?
So sure, I'm actually currently a migrations engineer, and it's primarily for WordPress websites. So basically, I work at a WordPress web hosting company that is now venturing into new hosting platforms. So it's pretty fascinating.
Nice. And have you always worked in the tech industry, or was there a life before tech?
There was a life before tech, actually. I've done a lot of things in my life. In fact, so I just turned 40, and in my life, I've probably had at least 25 different jobs. So
Wow.
I've had very, very, very different kind of jobs. I worked at Church's Chicken. I worked at convenience stores, a cashier. I've done waiting tables on the Riverwalk in San Antonio many moons ago. I was even in the hotel industry. The hotel industry was fun. That was probably my longest kind of tenure outside of the tech. The hotel business is a lot of fun, and so I did waiting tables there. I did reservations and things like that.
Wow. That's pretty cool. And so you kind of went from that to tech. So that's kind of a big switch. So yeah.
I can mention how it kind of how it went, how it switched.
Yeah.
So I basically got a job here in San Antonio back in the day at a place called InfoNXX. It was actually a switchboard operator kind of company where you would actually answer the phone saying, hey, this is 411, or what city and state are you in? What phone number do you need? It's kind of like an operator back in the day. Before Google was a thing, like people would actually call 411 for information. So I started in that job, and it was probably the most techie kind of job I had, even though it was more of a call center. But I started to learn a lot more about tech thanks to the manager I had, and I started getting involved in that. And then I eventually started wanting to get into website creation, which we can go into at some point, I'm sure.
Awesome. So you got your start kind of in the call center world in a sense. So what kind of company do you work for as a migrations engineer? Well, it's a WordPress company, so it's a tech-based company.
It is. So it's called Kinsta, and it used to be specifically a WordPress web hosting company. But we realized that WordPress is only a small share of the internet, right? So we wanted to open up to other platforms, PHP-based sites that are not WordPress, HTML static sites, and even now app and DB hosting, which is a whole nother animal that I'm still learning about. I've always been a WordPress guy, so it's new technologies that I'm learning now.
Okay, and do you currently work remote or in office?
I do. I work remote, which is great. I'm here in downtown San Antonio, right on the Riverwalk. So, lunch break, I get to walk on the river or, watch tourists. It's a lot of fun working remote.
I love that. And so what is your primary responsibility as a migrations engineer in your current company?
So essentially, what I'm tasked to do every day is customers reach out to us and say, hey, I want to sign up for Kinsta. So they sign up and they have no idea how to move a website. They're, usually just salespeople that have created a website or had a web developer at one point create a website for them. So they reach out to us and say, hey, can you help me get on your platform? So my job is to go into their current hosting platform, whether that be HostGate or WP Engine, etc. And I actually have to get their files and their database and actually move it over to our platform, our servers. So that's pretty much my main task every day.
Okay. So are you the sole migrations engineer on your team or your department, or are there others who also handle migration tasks?
There's others, thankfully. Otherwise, I'd be a very busy person. There's probably like 6 of us, I think, on our team at the moment, and like they're all remote, so we're all spread across the globe in different time zones. So we are almost 24/7 in migrations, not quite, but we do a good job of having an overnight U.S. shift as well.
Nice. Okay. Next, let's dive into experience, education, and the hiring process. So what were some of the required technical skills for this position?
So to be honest, I didn't apply directly for a migrations engineer position at Kinsta. I was actually moved from the support team into migration. So it's slightly different in that sense. A lot of the things for migrations engineer, say you're outside of the company and you apply for it, they're going to want you to know the very basics of creating a WordPress site, obviously. If you have a resume or a portfolio of at least a few WordPress sites to show what you're doing with WordPress, that goes a long way. So I would say, if you're looking to be a migrations engineer specifically, they want you to know Linux very well, command line, and they're going to want you to know at least the basics of how to create a WordPress site. Nothing fancy, but at least you know the structure of a WordPress, what database tables exist in WordPress by default, and things like that.
Okay. And you are speaking of the development side of WordPress, because for those that are entering the tech field, there's a WordPress.com where you just go in and sign up for a site, but then there's the WordPress where you're actually installing it in in a host, getting the files in there and everything. So
yeah, so our company Kinsta, we're WordPress.org, right? So any website we host has to be something you built on a platform somewhere else. However, we do migrate from WordPress.com. Those are tricky migrations and not always perfect because of the way they lock down their system at WordPress.com, but that's a whole nother story.
So did the company place greater emphasis on prior professional experience and education for this role, or did they primarily focus on assessing specific skill sets?
We're really big on skill sets, right? Because I personally have never went to college, so I have no degree. It's just basically my skills of knowing how to create a WordPress site over the years and learning bash commands and things like that at other companies that I work for. So I would say as long as your skill set is good and you can somehow display that or show that, and then that's a good thing.
So briefly, what prior skills, experience, and/or knowledge that you have did you have that helped you to prepare for and land this role?
So the biggest thing was coming from the tech support team into migrations. A lot of the things that tech support deals with sometimes is a lot more complicated because the problems are much different than simply moving files from one server to another. And so I kind of had that edge up on anybody else that may be coming from outside the company to try to be a migrations engineer. But a lot of the things that I would do in tech support that I would have to carry over would be, again, the command line, knowing how to get into servers via the command line, SSH, and doing things like that, and knowing, obviously, FTP and SFTP. pretty much all the file transfer protocols. You'd have to pretty much know some of that. I mean, they might, if someone didn't know one or two of them, maybe we could communicate that and teach. But it's good to have that knowledge already.
So from tech support to migrations, that was a promotion in a sense.
It was. So, I mean, it was it was actually a role they posted on the website for anybody to apply to. And I think we did have people from outside the company apply as well. But I really wanted that position. I've been in customer support and tech support for so many years. I was ready to do something new and different that wasn't so stressful, to be honest.
Yeah.
So, let me try something a little different. So I did go for that position, and luckily I was able to get hired for it.
Congrats. Okay, and I remember reading it on LinkedIn too. I was like, that's pretty cool. So how was the interview process for this role? Were there any specific scenarios or exercises that you had to demonstrate your knowledge for this position?
I'm sure there is for, again, people that apply from outside the company. Since I don't do that kind of interviewing, I'm not sure what that would be. But the people that interviewed knew me for years, right, working for the same company, so just in a different position. So it wasn't really too much for like scenarios, except for the fact they did probably and ask me about my skills with SSH, because we maybe didn't use it as much in tech support, things like that, but nothing too crazy.
Got it. Okay. So let's talk more about your day-to-day life as a migrations engineer. So I think you mentioned this, but does any aspect of your work involve working with clients, or is your particular role all internal facing?
So I do work with clients. I'll tell you, it's very different than what I was doing in tech support. Tech support, I was constantly just engaging with clients all day long. It was, and sometimes multiple ones at a time, right? But with migrations, I still have client-facing interactions, but it's much different. So, for example, we work off a queue-based system to where if a migration comes in, I look at it, I look at the details, make sure we can get logged into their platform, and then I let the customer know, hey, we're about to start your migration. And then basically, there's no interaction between that time and when I'm done, unless something comes up that I can't get to something or something's not working right. Then I'll engage with the client, but it's minimal, which is nice.
So it's kind of like keeping them up to date on what's going on with their migration. Got it. And what are some tools and technologies that you work with daily?
I'll go again and say command line, right? Terminal in my MacBook. I always have terminal open. I have to use that all the time. I also use transmit FTP if I have to somehow upload a file locally from my local machine. So I use that a lot. We use Intercom for engaging with clients. And Slack is our communication tool, the only way we can communicate. I mean, we have email, but these days I think email is pretty extinct for a lot of tech companies. So Slack is our mode of communication.
Got it. So were there any tools or technologies that were completely new to you that you had to learn on the job?
No, I wouldn't say there was anything completely new. And that's because I worked for many WordPress hosts before, right? I've worked for Pressable, I worked for WP Engine. And so coming from those companies, it's pretty much similar tools, if not exactly the same. So nothing really new, thankfully.
Awesome. So as far as your work structure, how are your projects or tasks determined within your team? Is there a designated manager or team lead who assigns work to you, or is it more of a collaborative effort?
Definitely collaborative effort. And I love our team because we're all very good at taking responsibility for things that come in. And so you never feel quite overwhelmed, right? Even if it's a big queue, we have always at least 2 people on shift at a time, usually 3. And so that just helps when things come in. We check the queue and we're like, hey, there's a migration, I'll take it. So that there's no one assigning things to anybody, which is nice because micromanagement sucks. So
yeah, that's pretty nice. And do you ever get to choose specific tasks or projects that you like to work on? Like, are there ever projects outside of migrations that you could ever hop on?
There's one other thing that we do besides migrations, which is kind of I've kind of take this on as my task because I like it. I don't know why. It's just it's redundant and silly, but some people don't like that. Me, I like things that are just like, let's get this done. So basically what that project is called Follow-Up DNS. And what we do is we look at the migrations we've already completed in the past 2 days, and we look to make sure that customers actually pointed the DNS to us from their previous host, to ensure that we're actually hosting the website and don't just store their files, right? So some people, they'll migrate, forget to change DNS or don't do it correctly, and then the whole time they think they're hosted with us, but their site's still at their old host. So that's a problem for some customers. So my job on that task is to go through the websites, make sure they're pointed to us. If they're not, I reach out to the customer and say, hey, you're not pointed to us. Did you have any issues? Do you need help? So that's one of the other things we do is migrations.
So a question about that, do you have a way to automate that, or do you manually do that with a tool?
So it's manual currently. It's always a discussion to make that automatic, but we have so many different things that we're trying to work on to bring in more revenue, obviously. And so because this particular tool doesn't really bring any revenue per se, so it's not really a high priority to get it automated. So it's manual, but it's fairly easy. It takes me, not very long. I don't know, an hour or something to do it. Just depending on how many migrations came in that week.
So out of curiosity, which tool do you use to check DNS records?
So we actually have an in-house script my manager actually created, and so it's like a bash script through Terminal, which is why I said we always use Terminal all day. It's pretty much in Terminal. And so basically the bash command just says enter domain, you paste the domain in there, and it says, hey, it's not pointed here, or it is pointed here. It's kind of cool.
So are you able to put a list of domains or just one at a time?
One at a time. It would be nice to have something where you just don't launch. That's a good idea.
Nice. Okay. So
we'll bring that up on the 101.
Yeah, I was curious about it because it's similar to what I do too as a web administrator. I do the same, so I'm like trying to get ideas. So, in your typical day to day as a migrations engineer, what are some example tasks that you work on, or just problems that you have to solve?
So a lot of the issues that we run into as migrations engineers is some of these web hosting companies, I won't name names, even though I want to. Their platforms are just absolutely garbage, right? I mean, you log into their control panel and you think, where is anything? You can't find anything. You can't find PHP admin. The database, you can't find where their files are. And if you do find a file manager, it's so clunky and so outdated, you can't even compress files, right? So the challenges we come across is these random hosts where their platforms are just very hard to navigate, not intuitive. And so what's frustrating about that is then we have to go and look for their documentation. Sometimes it doesn't exist. And that's how bad some of these hosts are. And so then you're stuck messaging the customer and saying, hey, I'm sorry, I know I'm the migrations engineer, but I can't find your files. And that looks bad on us, right? Because we're supposed to be doing it for them. And so that's probably the hardest part about the migrations engineer position.
And I'm sure you find ways to figure it out and find approaches. What would be your approach to solving that or addressing it?
So it's interesting because sometimes we have, the ability to SSH into someone's server at their other host. That makes migrations a breeze because we can just use rsync or things like this to move the files over. But some of these hosts, they lock down their platform so much that that's not available. And so part of our troubleshooting process is like, okay, I know all these methods to move files from one server to another. Which one is actually allowed at this company, right? And so what stinks about it is sometimes the only way available is, let's say, FTP, which is one of the slowest methods to actually get files moved over. So it's always one of those, kind of things where it's like, I wanted to get this migration done really quick, but it's probably going to be a couple hours. So that's a challenge.
So you've never had a situation where it couldn't be done. You're always able to find a way around it.
Yeah,
right?
we always are. There's some instances where customers will reach out and say, "Hey, I need this migrated ASAP," but we don't have a control panel login. We don't have backup. We don't have. It's like, how are we supposed to get your files? They don't have anything, and so that's challenging because then you're really at their mercy. If they can't get us into the server, there's almost no way to do it. I mean, there's one now. If they have most of the time, they'll at least have WP admin access, right? So at least we can log into the WordPress site. And if we can log into the WordPress site, we can use a plugin to migrate. It's not the best method.
Got it.
It's pretty good. Migrate Guru is a great plugin for that. So.
Okay. And so in your work, do you have specific deadlines, or do you just communicate the estimated timelines to whoever you need to, the client or?
Yeah, so there's no, there is deadlines in a sense that we strive to get migrations done in a certain time frame, right? But it's not always possible because of the method we're using from the other host, or we can't get logged in, we can't get proper credentials. So there's all kinds of things that can happen, but we do strive to get migrations done in a matter of, I think we do a 1 to 2 business day guarantee. But there's always, there's wiggle room if we're having issues with something.
So how does your team measure performance or success? Is there any sort of review or feedback process?
We do. We have one-on-ones. I believe mine is a monthly one-on-one with my manager. And so we go over, make sure everything's okay with me. And then again, what I love about Kinsta in general is it's really not a place where people are micromanaged. We're all adults, and we work remote. So it's always tricky for managers having a remote employee. But if the company is built in such a way that we've always been a remote, which we have, then it's a lot easier because there's strategies in place. There's, the ways to keep track of things. And my manager does all that. But to be honest, we don't get like a report saying, oh, XYZ didn't do this, or we don't, it's not like that. So it's actually very cool.
I love that. And do you have projects or regular meetings that involve cross-team collaboration with other departments or teams to accomplish certain tasks or solve certain problems?
So I wouldn't call it meetings. We're not very meeting heavy either, except our one-on-ones. But we do have fireside chats and such, which are nice. But I will say on this question, we deal a lot with the abuse and malware team on the migration side of things, because what happens quite often is we migrate a site from another host that is badly infected with malware. And it's usually the customer has no idea, right? They're just operating as normal. But we start to bring over the files in the database, and we actually find malware in the website. And sometimes I'm able to clean it myself. Sometimes it's not a horrible infection. But there's times that it's deep embedded into theme files and things that I don't want to get messy with because I'm not that great at malware. So we'll have a malware and abuse team look at it, and we just ping them on Slack and say, hey, can you look at this? It's pretty infected. So that's one team that we're always in communication with, which is nice to have that team to help out when it comes up.
Yeah, that makes sense. And finally, what is a tip that you would give to someone who is entering the tech field, or maybe already in the tech field and considering a role as a migrations engineer? In general, what do you think could help them prepare for a job like this?
Great question. I would say build websites, right? I mean, that's what I did to get into web hosting in general. Is I just started creating websites for fun. I never intended to make money off of them. One of my oldest sites that I've had for many years is thinktaiwan.com. That website was created during my journey of living in Taiwan and being fascinated with the country, that I decided as a passion project to start thinktaiwan.com. I'd never created a website before in my life. I didn't know what WordPress was. And so I just did a lot of research, how to create a website, how to get an easy website done. And WordPress just happened to kept coming up in my Google searches back in 2010. And so I downloaded WordPress and I started playing with it. And over the years, read books about WordPress and YouTube videos, tutorials. And ever since then, I probably over time have created 20, 30 websites, so it's just fun. And again, never intending to make money. I wasn't like stressing out like, oh, how I'm going to place ads on here. None of that stuff. Yeah. Just do it for fun. Enjoy it. Enjoy the process, learning how to add a plugin, even how to create your own plugin. Things like that is very important when you're really wanting to learn or get into the tech field with WordPress specifically, or any kind of hosting for that matter.
Okay, and if anyone watching wanted to ask additional questions about becoming a migrations engineer or learn more about you and your tech journey, do you have a website or social media pages that you'd like to share?
Sure. They can find me on my website, 210mike.com, 210mike.com. And on there, I think I have the LinkedIn. I think I have Twitter and Facebook as well, connected there, so you can find me on those socials. And I'm always open to questions. I mean, that's how we met, right? I mean, we're doing this,
Yeah.
knowing each other for I don't know how long now. So
I shot you an email and you were so nice and so kind to answer any questions. So I appreciate that. So that wraps up the questions. Thank you so much, Mike, for sharing what you do in your role and chatting with me today. Keep up the great work as always. If anyone has questions, feel free to drop them in the comments. And you can feel free, Mike, to follow up here with anyone in the comment section. Thank you everyone for watching and see you in the next video.
thank you.